Hi guys, welcome to the Revive Stronger podcast. This is the improvement season. I am at home. This is Steve Hall in his childhood room. I have Alan to my right, but Pascal is still in Berlin in Germany. Say hi, Pascal.
Hey, no, not this time. But just for the people who are actually watching this over on YouTube, it is still Steve and Pascal here. I shaved off my beard. Yeah, as you remember from last time, I was starting to look like a slob, especially with the longer hair and the beard. It's not the best combination. Absolutely legit here in Berlin, yeah. But I needed to actually take care of myself. And yeah, as you can see, Steve moved places. Not to his final apartment, but more so back home to his parents. And yeah, so it's still us. It's still the Improvement Season podcast. You are at the right place. And yeah.
Yeah, unfortunately, this is how much we love you guys. This is how much we want to get content out. Is I have gone home because I have no Wi-Fi actually at my current flat. I am in the process of moving flats, which is a bit of a stress in itself. Which we could end up actually talking about, like stress, but we aren't going to be talking about that. First of all, we're going to talk about, as always, kind of how our last kind of week has gone in terms of training, nutrition, just, I guess, life. I will probably touch on it a little bit. And then we're going to touch on a topic. And this week's topic we're going to be talking about is basically cardio, and cardio during your off season particularly, but then cardio in general. I think we're just going to be talking about it because I guess you could probably do loads of podcasts on cardio, but we're going to talk about it mostly in like your improvement season and your off season. So I don't know if you want to start, Pascal. How's kind of your last week gone? It hasn't been the best, although you feel better now.
Unfortunately, things happen in life, and it wasn't really an injury this time, so I can tell you that. But it was more so that on Friday last week, the previous week on Friday, I thought that I had food poisoning. I spare you the details, yeah. But I thought that I had food poisoning, but it turned out that it was some kind of a virus, like rotavirus or norovirus, which just destroyed me for days. Like I was hardly able to do anything at all. I was still, and that was perhaps a mistake because I was still hitting the gym on that Sunday and that Monday. Because I thought it was only food poisoning and I thought I was already getting better, right? Then I hit the gym and it still was my overreaching week. Well, it was planned to be my overreaching week. So I went into the gym. I thought I was already recovered from that food poisoning, hit it really hard in the gym. I got back home and I was just like smashed. And always like throughout the day, once I ate something, I got worse and worse and worse. And the symptoms always got more severe throughout the day then. So something like feverish attacks, flashes, stuff like that. Super lethargic. I was sleeping a lot and really not focused at all. Of course, a discomfort in general, digestive issues and stuff like that. So not really pleasant. And it first got better here on Thursday. So I took then after my Monday training session, I just stopped training at all because I always say when it's an illness that is more severe or that is actually also from your chest and upwards, so more so also in your head, right, then rather skip the gym than push it, right? This is what I then did. I took a rest day on from Tuesday on up to Thursday, and then hit the gym again on Friday, but took it really easy on my system, right? Just to get some blood flow in, nothing hard on my system. And also when it comes to nutrition, and I think that this might be really interesting for the people to hear, because when it comes to the nutrition, I wasn't really able to eat anything at all, right? But I always try to hit my protein levels. And this, even though I wasn't able to eat anything, I wasn't really hungry at all, even though I didn't really eat anything at all. And whenever I ate something, I experienced some kind of stomach discomfort, but still I managed to get in my protein. And this is something that is actually quite easy to do, even when you're in such a situation where you can't really get anything down into your system, a whey shake is always possible. It is. It is. You don't need to fancy it up with kind of different stuff with oats or anything like that. Just plain water with 1 or 2 scoops of whey. Do it like 4 to 5 times a day. You need to drink anyway, especially in such a situation, right? And just blend it with a little bit of protein. And when you don't want to have it flavored or anything like that, if that is causing you to, I don't know, feel a little bit uncomfortable in that situation, right? Then make sure to have some protein at home that is neutral and flavorless. And it's so easy to then still get, yeah, it is. But I mean, it is no excuse. And I'm not saying it to be like that hardcore guy or something. You need to get your protein in, bro. That's not what I'm saying. But I hear it from so many people, or I've experienced it in the past, not just with clients, but also people around me who were also ill and just perhaps only having a cold and didn't commit to their nutrition program at all, or didn't even eat any kind of protein. And I think that it's kind of a bad excuse. I was feeling like dying, and everything I just got put into my stomach, it came out immediately, right? But that didn't keep me from actually drinking just a little bit of protein to at least get some protein into my system and at least get some energy in my system as well. And in my opinion, there's always a chance of at least ensuring that, right?
Yeah, I think the only issue...
I don't know, what do you think about that? I mean, am I missing something?
I experience it quite a lot with people I've kind of spoken to in the past when they've been ill, and I sometimes feel like they use it as a bit of an excuse to then just completely throw their diet out the window, and they're like, oh, all I could eat was like, I don't know, Pop-Tarts or something very not good for them, like in that sort of quantities, and it's not going to help with their body composition goals or improve kind of how they're feeling generally. And I think both of us would agree, first of all, like prioritize your health, feeling better. But if you can, and I agree with you, I don't see an issue with just having a whey shake with water. And if maybe, okay, potentially some of the lactose in there is upsetting your stomach, or like you don't have like the milk or whatever that might be upsetting you, like even having something like EAAs, like essential amino acids, like a flavored, you can get like I don't know, maybe a juicy flavor of that, or have it with some squash and drink that. Like you need, like you said, you need to stay hydrated, and protein, like ideally you want to still try and hit some protein. I mean, we're not like those, you don't want to think, you're hardcore, like you do anything to succeed. It's actually quite a small thing, like you're just drinking something that's flavored. And I agree. I think some people use it as a bit of an excuse to like just go and eat junk food or something like that when they're ill, because it's hyper palatable, but still drinking a whey shake you can make that quite tasty if you want to.
And I can definitely see the point of that excuse, and also rationalizing it for yourself, because you are feeling down. You are probably not on your highest peak in terms of your willpower. You probably in that moment have other priorities, and especially the body just craves it because it perhaps needs something else or something, right? But what I also did, like back in, I don't know, 2013 or something, where I had a true food poisoning because of salmon. What I did there was, because I couldn't eat there as well, but what I did was I actually took chocolate protein powder and heated it up on a stove and drank it as like hot chocolate. And this was really palatable and easy to consume. I mean, when you're not able, or when you don't really like to get down a protein shake, perhaps this might be an option as well. Do some kind of hot chocolate or something, right? And try to get it down, because it's just a box you can tick. And I think that as long as you're not dying, as long as you're not like severely ill, like where you're on the edge of dying or anything like that, I think that this is or should be possible to still get in somehow. Right?
Yeah, I think, not to bang on about this point too much, but just off the top of my head, I'm thinking, right, your body's in a state where it's unwell and it needs to be nourished. and you're then going to choose foods that are opposite to that. And it just doesn't make sense to me. It's kind of like, all right, this is the time you really want to make sure you're giving your body what it needs or what it wants. And if you can't eat as much, then everything you have should hopefully be like promoting that recovery. But yeah, it sounds like your week was a bit crappy. How, just out of interest and for the listeners, how are you approaching kind of coming out of this? Because obviously you were planned to overreach, so you didn't really overreach, but you didn't really have a deload. You're obviously under a lot of stress and kind of fatigue from the illness. How are you progressing into your next training week?
So this was also a question I had because I was too emotionally invested in my own process, and that's why we've talked about it offline. And you made a good suggestion, and I actually took that one. So all I'm doing now is I take the first half of that week actually lighter, and then I will start to push it harder. And perhaps at the end of the week, I will reassess how I'm feeling and how the week went, and perhaps overload then or overreach next week and really try to push it hard. Or when I'm already like in a fatigue state, take the deload next week, like doing it somehow auto-regulative, depending on how the entire week went and how I'm feeling at the end of the week. And this is basically what I'm going to do. And but Steve, tell me a little bit about your past week.
So my past week, I feel really bad talking about my past week almost, because you messaged me, you're like, you're a bugger. You're extending your mesocycle by a week, and I've had to have cut mine short. Damn you for being like not ill, and like touch wood, I'm still not going to be ill. So my past week has actually been really productive in the gym. I know I'm touching on the edge of like my MRV, my maximal recoverable volume, because my sessions have been long, they've been tough, but I've been keeping like a rep in the tank. I haven't felt like I definitely couldn't do any more during every session. I've been recovering between workouts. I haven't been like perpetually sore throughout the entire week. And yeah, I hit some really, really good numbers. I mean, I haven't looked because I haven't had really access to the internet. I haven't had a second to like look back at my training data, but I may well have hit some like maybe lifetime PRs. So like my bench felt super strong on my first push workout. I just did legs yesterday, and I hit 150 kilos on my high bar squat, and I got 4 sets. I think I got 8, and then my next 3 sets were 7, which is really good. And I wasn't like, by the end of that, I mean, I was tired, but I wasn't like, there's no way I could do any more. So I'm quite excited to see how this next week goes, because I'm really going to be pushing the limits. Yeah, things have just been going well. And I mean, we spoke last week about my weight, I think we spoke about it. My weight spiked up, which was like edema related with, we're assuming it was all water retention. But actually my scale weight has probably been the same average. So I don't know if I think when you're in gaining phases, sometimes you get like these growth spurts where it just like a chunk of weight just suddenly comes on. You're like, where did that come from? Like I was gaining slowly and then I just saw this growth spurt. And I think there's that. And there's also the fact I'm kind of still early doors in my gaining phase. So I don't know if just after my 3 weeks of like high carbs and in this calorie surplus, my body just suddenly kind of held on to everything. Like now you're carbohydrate, like you're full of glycogen and everything. Like I was maintaining like around low 170s with all of the extra carbs. Like my carbs basically doubled. Whether or not then like 3 extra pounds, a couple of extra pounds just were additional water weight because of holding on to all of that glycogen. I don't know if that happened. Also, I guess as I've gone through my mesocycle, like fatigue builds up. You have a bit of that kind of associated water retention with all the added stress from the training. I'm not concerned though. And I think it's important to, and we always preach this with our clients and with people who are going through gaining phases, like take everything into account. Like I'm not just focusing on the scale. In fact, I'm really still weigh in every day, but I really don't give a shit what the scale's particularly saying, as long as it's going up and not stupidly fast rates and I'm not getting like super fat quickly. Like I'm really happy.
One thing in that regard, now that you are you have some kind of momentum going on in terms of your lifts and your performance, do you think that this is what something when we are actually talking about a gaining phase needing to be a little bit longer, and you don't want to actually go through these phases of a short gaining phase, then immediately into a cut, then back into a gaining phase, because you then would interfere with starting that role and that momentum.
Yeah, I definitely think there's a case of the fact that, I mean, just the fact that muscle growth is a slow process, but it's also massively demanding on the body. It's like if your body is just ramping up all of the machinery it needs to like start thinking about, oh, Steve's in a calorie surplus. He's been doing that a while. Oh, he's pushing his body really hard. We probably need to repair this stuff and grow maybe some more muscle tissue. I think if you kind of, if you're starting, it's like turning something on, letting it warm up. Like if you think about like, I don't know, energy saving light bulbs, if you turn them on, they're really dim. And if you turn them off after like a few seconds, then they're off, and then you turn them on, they're dim. They never get a chance to get bright and actually bright and like light up the room. So
where did you get that analogy from?
Literally,
well, it's a really, really, really good analogy. I did get what you were trying to say there, and I really do agree, and especially because I sometimes have the feeling that people think that there are different switches inside your body, and you can just put them on and shut off the other one, and you're in a different mode. But it's like Broderick said, and I really can't quote him on that one.
Action over time.
Action over time, exactly. That when you start to actually go from a cut, let's say, into a gaining phase, it's not that your performance is starting to increase from the first day on and you are building efficiently muscle mass from the first day on. It takes time for the body to actually realize what is going on, and that you're not in a deprived state anymore, and that it needs to save up more energy or anything like that, right? It actually realized then over time, okay, I'm in a pretty good state. I can save up some energy. I have enough glycogen stores. I can actually build some muscle mass right now. All those kind of things, right? And this is why I also think that you should stay in a gaining phase for a little bit longer, and not always because at some point I saw this question coming up. Could I, when we take that 3-to-1 ratio of 3 months or something cutting, and then 1 month of 3 months of gaining, and then 1 month of cutting or anything, could we actually narrow it down to a time window of 1 month where we are gaining for 3 weeks and cutting for 1 week? And I think that the body isn't able to actually switch or go from one mode to the other as efficiently as when you take some time to actually get used to that kind of system, especially when it comes to muscle building. I think that there's some kind of momentum needed to actually build efficiently muscle mass.
Yeah, I think it's like the body grows muscle the best in a calorie surplus. It loses fat the best. Well, it can only lose fat in a calorie deficit. When we try and recomp, and people try and do these like calorie cycling when they have like deficit days, high calorie days, like I think over time that could work out, but it's going to take a lot longer, and sometimes it could just lead to not much happening because the body's just like, are we on, are we off, are we doing this, are we doing that? It's just not getting the inputs it needs, and it is that overall action over time that's so important. It's even to the degree of like just a really pure example here that's just come to my head is when we're thinking about like peak week for bodybuilders. If you've got a bodybuilder who is on very low carbs, and then you're trying to carb him up for his peak week, the actual like enzymes and everything to assimilate and like store carbohydrates have downregulated massively. And then you're going to give him a shitload of carbs, which theoretically he might be able to use, assimilate and store. But because all of those systems have downregulated, they're not. So something, a refeed, or at least like practice peak weeks, or like initial like higher carbs, or if you're coming from a higher carb diet, do for you is they kind of upregulate all of these things so that when you do then do your actual peak, it can pay off. So that's like a front load actually has the purpose of it actually sets the body up for a more effective peak at the end of that week. But it's like biology is like this all the time. Like you said, action over time, and things upregulate, downregulate. I mean, if you have that momentum going, I think it's good to like keep it going until kind of, you hit a kind of a stop, and or you see like you're milking like exercises out, you're milking out volume, you're milking out muscle growth, and then there's eventually you're just getting trickles out of those nipples.
Are you doing any kind of cardio?
Yes. So we're get on to the topic of cardio.
Yeah, it was really cheap, that transition.
So I don't like, do I call this cardio? So what I do is I've actually reduced my step. So I have a step target. I kind of, as a person, I like numbers. I like ticking boxes. I like hitting macros. So I do have a step target, and I was hitting 12,000. But I found myself like going out for walks to try and hit this 12,000. And I was getting to a point, and I was like, in these later weeks of training, like I could increase my calories, just give myself a bit more recovery. And I was like, actually, you know what? I'm going to reduce my step count to 10,000. So now I'm hitting 10,000 steps a day, and increase the sleep by 15 minutes, just every single morning, get up 15 minutes later, because I'm reducing my morning walk by like 15 minutes. So I was like, that will probably help my recovery more than trying to increase number of calories, sorry. So yeah, I'm hitting 10,000 steps a day on average. On weekends, sometimes I go over, it's just whatever life throws at me. And then cardio, I don't know if you'd call this cardio, but I do 100 calories warm up. Oh no, 50 calories warm up, which takes like 5 minutes. So it's just getting the heart rate up, just getting warm, which is should be part of a warm up anyway. So I don't know if I'd call that cardio. I'd more probably just call that like warming up. But it's enough, and I'm a very like, I come from a background of like longer distance running. I have a low resting heart rate of like 50 beats per minute. In contest prep, I think it got down to like 40, which was a bit scary. Just goes to show how efficient the body tries to be. So I'm very fit, and I can perform my workouts. My work capacity is pretty damn high. So yeah, that's as much as my cardio goes. And I don't need to, like, I'm not trying to battle. Like, some people do cardio in their off season to like battle putting on excess fat, but my calories are at like 3,500. It's not like I'm ravenous and like struggling to keep that under control. So yeah, my cardio is pretty low at the moment. How about yourself, Pascal? What are you doing for that?
Yeah, I changed my approaches drastically here over the past month, because I know and realized that in the summertime, when I was coming out of the cutting phase, I did way too much of activity on a daily basis. But I think that it was still those habits from the contest prep that I was overly active on a daily basis, because it became a habit of mine to actually go out for a walk every single day. And then because the first 10 weeks after my contest prep, I did train twice daily for 6 days a week, which is quite a lot. And I was always like going then to the gym, which took me up to 15 to 20,000 steps per day, in addition to the warm-ups I was doing, right? And I was always doing like 10 minutes on a cross trainer, which then twice per day with all the steps, and twice per day a training session. I think I was complaining like a couple of months back, when I was saying, yeah, sometimes I overeat a little bit, but now looking back in hindsight, I think I was perhaps even undereating, because I probably highly underestimated this time how active I was still in that time frame. However, I must also know that I think that many people overestimate by a huge amount how active they actually are, and how much they are expending on a daily basis in terms of their energy, right? And then they easily overeat or overconsume on calories, because they think that they are actually burning like, I don't know, 4,000 calories as a maintenance or something, but they are actually quite sedentary and only burning 3,000 or anything like that, right? But what I actually wanted to do, because I felt like throughout the November and December time that I slowly got burned out because of that, because I was still trying to maintain that high level of activity each and every single day, with all the other things in life, like the duties, the daily tasks. I'm sitting on the desk and doing my work, right? I felt like it interfered with my productivity to that extent already, because I was always like going out for, I don't know, a couple of minutes of walk, which is good, of course. Health-wise, absolutely, and also I think that there are many benefits to it. But when it comes to the point where you're doing so much activity that other things suffer from it, and especially things you need to do, then I think you must reevaluate what you're doing right now, and especially when you're in a gaining phase. I mean, we are always talking about the long-term approach to things and that you want to set yourself up for future success. And when your body becomes super efficient in doing some kind of activity, this is actually the opposite of what you want to have in your system, right? You want to actually, when it comes to cardio and calories and stuff like that, metabolism in general, to be as inefficient as possible, so that once you are moving, you are expending more calories because of that movement, except for burning like nothing at all, because your body is used to actually do that much of activity. So what I was doing over the past month was giving myself a little bit more of a break, accepting also not needing to move that much, that it's all right when I'm not going for my half-hour walk each and every morning at 10 a.m. because I was already training before that. And it's not that I'm sedentary by any means, right? But I just reduced it by a lot. And especially when it comes to doing like a list, like all the list activities, because I was having, I'm having a spinning bike at home. And I do remember the time in October, November, December time where I was every day sitting on my bike and doing some kind of list where it's just like, what's the purpose behind that? Yeah. Right? Even though it is list, we've talked about it in previous episodes already, even though it's list, at some point it can interfere with your resistance training and actually take away from your recovery and not aid in recovery. And I think that especially from a mental aspect, like doing so much activity on a daily basis and not giving yourself a break and relax every once in a while was really beneficial for me. And also, like, right now I really do enjoy not needing to be that active, because I know the time will come where I'm back in a contest prep, back in a cutting phase, where it's then needed from me to actually step up my energy expenditure game, step up that need game, and get moving again a little bit more. And when I can set myself up to then enjoy that kind of process more again, instead of it being a burden or anything like that, I think that this is the best approach I can do right now. And especially because, I mean, sure, we are in a gaining phase and perhaps there are some health benefits to your cardiovascular work. But other than that, I don't really see so much benefits in keeping a high amount of cardio in your plan, because, I mean, we are physique athletes and the main purpose should be to progress in that regard and not actually pounding up your cardiovascular work to a point where it might interfere with your progress in the gym. And I could imagine that this was the case in the past for me.
I mean, you touched on so many good points, but something I really, really wanted to hone in on was as the audience listening to this, we're bodybuilders, physique athletes, people are interested in improving our body composition. We're already going to the gym. We're already weightlifting, which in itself is cardiovascular because the heart is getting if you're doing high volume squats, you're working your heart to a high degree. If you're doing walking lunges, you're getting freaking shattered. There's a lot of aerobic kind of recovery that has to go on between sets to recover. And as bodybuilders, so we're healthy from that standpoint. And I'd go out, I was kind of thinking this through my head, and I was like, is this wrong? But no, I think it's actually right. And in any phase during a bodybuilder or physique, like for us, we want to do the minimum amount of cardio we can get away with. I think that as a general rule, when you're dieting for fat loss, you want to do the minimum you can do and get away with. Off-season, minimum. Maintenance, minimum. There's not a point at which that should be a large chunk of what you're doing, because our number one goal is muscle growth or muscle maintenance or muscle kind of muscle growth or muscle maintenance. So if you're doing more cardio than you need to kind of keep your kind of aerobic, like your general work capacity high enough, you're doing more than you need to like help bring calorie balance at the appropriate like level, and you're doing more than you need to for like active recovery and promoting kind of blood flow in certain areas and things like this, and warming up. If you're doing more than that, then why the fuck aren't you doing more weight training? Like
I think that is such a valid point to bring up, like especially in regards to the HIIT zealots, I would call them, who are doing HIIT and see it as a valid thing to do as a bodybuilder, where it's just like, okay, let me just ask you then that question. When you can get away, or when you think that HIIT might be a good idea, why aren't you doing like a couple of sets of heavy ass walking lunges or squats or anything that really, really makes you out of breath? Why aren't you doing that? Because it is basically the same. Just squat 10 repetitions. That probably takes you about 30 to 45 seconds. What is HIIT? A high intensity bout of 30 to 45 seconds, right? And then you take a short rest time in between, and then you go again. And I would definitely say that this probably has a better and higher impact on your overall physique than doing a sprint, or I don't know, pushing a prowler or anything like that, right? And I think that it is such a good point you bring up. And I also, on that note, because people always then come up with some arguments of why it might be beneficial, then there are some people who actually come up with a concern of, but my stamina isn't as good. Okay, let's take a look at your true stamina. When you aren't able to get into another set of squats after like 5 minutes, and you're not like squatting 250 kilograms. This is something completely else. I think that then it's absolutely appropriate to rest that long. But when you're not fully recovered after like 2 to 3 minutes and you really need some more rest, sure, then it might be a good idea to put in some cardiovascular work to actually increase your work capacity in that instance. But other than that, when you are able to actually get into your working set like every 2 to 3 minutes, then you're absolutely fine. And you don't really need some additional cardio to be more cardiovascularly more efficient or anything. But that's only my opinion. But I see that argument really often, that people then say, okay, I need that to recover from my sets. But most of the time, when you're not a big fat slob or a power lifter who's actually waiting like 10 minutes for a set to then start again, you probably don't need that. And yeah,
no, I think most like physique athletes actually probably have like very good VO2 maxes, because we are doing high volumes of training, and then therefore like pretty good low resting heart rates. And if you don't have either of those things, then yeah, maybe you need to do some low level kind of cardio work to improve those aspects so you can have a greater work capacity. But if you're going through like high volume hypertrophy mesocycles, you're probably building the exact thing that you need to be building for your sport, and that's going to be promoting health as well. And I very much view like cardio very much like mobility work and stretching. Do as little as you need to for your sport, because more is not better. Doing more is not going to improve things. So I actually, to it, like, because I think we've beat that point home. Something I've thought was brilliant that you touched on is, like, we've talked about the physiological things. There's also the psychological thing, because I do remember in my prep, like, having to do cardio and having to hit, there was a point at which I think I was trying to hit 20 to 25,000 steps every day. And when you do have a job and you do have other things in your life, and you do have like high volume training sessions you're trying to do, to have that in there as well. I remember there were days at which maybe it was, I don't know, it might be 4 hours until I was going to bed, and I had like 10,000 more steps to hit. And I like literally my heart would sink. I would go, like, I'd feel depressed and I'd get anxious and stressed, and I'd be like, Charlotte, I can't sit down and watch TV with you because I need to go outside and go for a walk because I need to hit these steps. And like at times that's appropriate, such as in contest prep, you need to take things to an extreme to lose that body fat. But if you're fucking doing that in your off season and you're suffering from anxiety to hit steps, fucking hell, like, reduce your food a little bit and don't walk as much. Or you might not even need to reduce your food. You might end up, because, I mean, it's not like you do 1,000 steps. That's not going to be tons extra calories you're going to be able to consume. But it might just be that little amount that you can just slob out a little bit, or like recover more and do more training. Like, I think I've seen it with people getting kind of too attached to their in-season habits and then taking it into their off-season, and they're still doing stupid steps, stupid amounts of cardio.
And I think that this might be the biggest problem, that it becomes a habit, and you get so attached to that kind of procedure for that day that it's hard to get rid of it. And because it's such an emotional aspect to it as well, because it's always a daily part of your routine. I could see that when you bring that point up for some people, that they get offended in that situation. It's the same when it comes to food choices or stuff like that, or dietary choices, that people get so attached to it and feel like as if you're calling them out when you make them aware of what they are doing right now. That it became such an intimate habit already that when you bring it up, that it might be a good idea to change things up by now, that they already get a little bit aggressive in that approach. And the thing is, just think about it in the long term. We're always talking about the thing that you want to become better over time and perhaps even add more over time, right? But there's only so much time you have left. The same applies to the principles of training. I never put clients of mine on 6 days a week, 2 days 2 times a day training split. First and foremost, because it's fucking unnecessary for 99% of the people out there. It is. And another thing is that many people simply don't have the capacity for it in terms of their daily structure. They can't really recover between the training sessions because they have a daily job. They can't really get all the foods in they need on a really scheduled thing. But other than that, I'm just saying that in terms of the work volume, where do you want to go from there? Right? And let's just say someone, a bikini athlete, I'm just bringing up a bikini athlete because I've seen it so often already with these type of athletes who are doing then 5 times a week cardio to lose the last bit of fat for their contest prep, right? And they are taking these habits into their off season, still doing 5 times a week, 30 minutes up to 60 minutes cardio. And just imagine, let's just theoretically say you keep that into your program for the entire off season. You start a contest prep. Where do you want to go from there? Do you want to actually go then to 10 times cardio? I mean, it's just the long-term thinking as well, right? Mm-hmm. And I do absolutely agree with you. You want to set yourself up for the future, and also you want to get away with a minimum that you can get away with. Mm-hmm. And what that might end up look like, this is absolutely individual, of course.
And I think you actually brought up a good point, and I don't want to offend anyone, but what I would say is, if it does offend you, if it does kind of make you feel a bit like, oh, Steve, you sound like a bit of a dick, like, oh, you're making me feel uncomfortable, then that you're the exact person that needs to have a look at what they're currently doing and really assess what you're doing. What are the pros? What are the cons? Why is this within your program? And really have a kind of an analysis of what you're doing. Because I think some people, like you said, they get into habits, they get into like just doing it, they get comfortable with it. They almost, I don't know, like brainwash themselves into thinking that they enjoy cardio and it's part of their, like, they like really want to do this thing. And I did the same with food. So an example of this is like, in my past, I used to eat clean. I wouldn't have these junky foods. And I kind of, in my head, I don't like cream. I don't like fried food. I don't like pastries. And then I started incorporating these things now and then. I was like, holy shit, these are really nice. And the same goes like when you reduce your cardio, you might end up finding, oh, actually, like this is good. And I don't enjoy cardio that much. And like, it's nice having this extra free time. And I think if you are in that situation where you're already maybe doing lots of steps or you're doing lots of cardio, don't just drop it, scale it, like transition down. So I've got a client right now who's in his off season, or not off season, he doesn't compete, but he's in a gaining phase. And he was telling me, like, if we reduce my, like, I'm a bit anxious about hitting my steps, and it became obvious that I thought he was just hitting them as like a lifestyle and he'd hit that many steps, but it'd become obvious he'd gone out of his way to try and hit this step count. He was a bit like, you know what, I'm not enjoying having to have to do all of this, and I'm a bit anxious about dropping them. My calories would have to come down, or like if I do a certain amount on a certain day, what do I do? And it's like, you don't want to just like, I don't, because I do like 20,000 steps on the weekend, then give myself extra food. Like I don't adjust via that. Like it's just like you'll wind yourself up too much. But what we're going to do is like, we're just trickling things down. So reduce by like 5 to 10%, see what happens with his weight, keep food the same, and then adjust down further, get to a point where it's like, okay, this is a sustainable amount. That is absolutely fine. And I think it's a sliding scale. So we're not saying absolutely do no cardio and do no steps in your off season. No, you need to do like a minimum amount for decent health. And that, again, will look different for different people. But I think most of us should be able to hit 5,000 steps in a day. Like that's like I don't know, 2 20-minute walks or something.
Absolutely.
That should be doable. And like warming up for the gym, that's probably like as minimum as you'd want to go. But if you're doing loads more than that, that's probably where you want to be like, right, is that actually the best way? Because if we want to periodize our cardio to potentiate the best fat loss, we want to be very inefficient at cardio, and we want to be doing very little so that we have a lot of room to move with. And at Revive Stronger, that's what we're all about. We're about optimizing things, making things as easy as possible. And that's very much why, like, part of why I like the primer phase, going through maintenance before going through a cutting phase, is not just because, right, we're desensitized to training volume, so we don't need that much to create a good hypertrophic stimulus that's going to maintain our muscle growth, but also we've transitioned our calories down, so we're not coming from like bulking calories to cutting calories and being like, oh my god, this is a massive shock. We're actually coming down, and we're transitioned into a nice smooth like transition. So when you're thinking about anything, when you are changing stuff, it's not like we're going from all of it to none of it. It's like just transition it down to an appropriate level that you need at that given time.
No, absolutely. And there are 2 points I wanted to touch on that came to my mind now while we were talking. And the first is the question of, do you actually do what you love right now? And I think that's a really valid question everyone should ask themselves every once in a while. So you probably started bodybuilding, physique sport, strength sport, or anything that has to do with a barbell, because I assume that every one of our listeners is actually having a barbell in their hands. Not now, but most of the time. That they got into the sport because they love that kind of sport, right? And if physique, bodybuilding, no matter what it is what you love to do, and you hate doing cardio or something like that, why the hell are you doing a big chunk of cardio then, right? Especially when it's not needed. And sometimes it's not even needed at all. I mean, when you're a healthy individual, when your cardiovascular work is actually fairly good, right? I've seen contest preps where you didn't really need to do any cardio at all. It is possible. It is hard for many individuals, because sometimes you need to slash or reduce the calories by a significant amount. And then, of course, cardio is a nice tool to expend a little bit more of energy. But when you're already a little bit active, you have a good metabolism, stuff like that, it's not absolutely mandatory to do cardio, and even in a contest prep, right? Where you get the leanest of them all. So is it that you are loving doing some kind of cardio? Then go ahead, do it to an extent where it still allows you to progress in the gym and progress in the other thing you are loving as well. But this is always something you have to keep in mind, that ask yourself, why am I doing that cardio? Is it because I'm afraid of reducing it because then I get fat or anything? Or is it that you're doing it to actually get away with eating a little bit more? Is it because you're doing it because of cardiovascular reasons? All those kind of things. These are questions you need to ask for yourself. But the main question you always need to ask yourself is, do you actually enjoy what you're doing? Because when you're not, this isn't sustainable, and it is all about sustainability.
I don't know about you, Pascal, but the reason I got into bodybuilding was because I wanted to look good naked. I think that's what most people did.
Wait a second. I really need to think about why I got into bodybuilding in the first place. It all started with, yes, I mean, I was really in an unhealthy position. But I think it was mainly because I wanted just to look visually more appealing.
Yeah.
And I think that's an absolutely valid approach, because I think that more people get into that because of this reason, but don't actually say it out loud because they think that you're not allowed to. Yeah. You need to have some kind of other incentive for it. I don't know.
But no, I think we've driven home the point of which, as physique athletes, as bodybuilders, the things we have to do for our sport is weight training, and we have to somewhat control our nutrition. Apart from that, we only need to do things that are going to help us do those two things. And being healthy is part of that. Keeping our calories under control is part of that. Having good work capacity is part of that. And otherwise, it's not like you said, you don't actually have to do cardio for fat loss. You don't have to have that in your contest prep. And if you're fortunate not to have to do that, pretty cool. Like, right on. Good on you. But if you're unfortunate enough to be like maybe a small inactive individual that needs to do a fair amount so they can actually stick to their calories, because otherwise their calories would have to be silly low, then yeah, maybe that's something you'll have to do, and that's a consequence of, I don't know, just life. So yeah, I think we've covered most things.
Yeah, but I think on that note, because you concluded it somehow right now, there's one more thing, and this is because we are now deep in our off season, and I really do think that not many people do need cardio in their off season. Basically not. I mean, unless you really do enjoy it, unless, again, you have some kind of health issues that forces you to actually be a little bit more active. I think it's absolutely fine if you just lay back, enjoy the time of your off season, concentrate on just gaining that lovely muscle mass on your frame, and that's all.
Yeah, I think literally keep it to the minimum amount you need, especially in your off season. Like, as far as we're concerned with our clients, it's like, right, just do enough so you have some active recovery, enough to warm up, enough to keep your calories under control somewhat, and like otherwise, like really keep that down, because especially like things like steps and stuff, like if you can have that as a tool to ramp up later, like we've spoken about, it's just going to help fat loss so much, make it so much easier. Awesome. I don't know is there anything else we want to. The only other thing I've got in my head that I really wanted to say is people have been commenting for timestamps, and you've probably replied to them saying how I just don't deem it as probably something that's appropriate for our discussion, because we're kind of bouncing all over the place. I just don't. That's probably what you've ended up.
I mean, just take this discussion here now. We've brought up so many points just in doing cardio, and these are two opinions throwing back and forth, and we are just exchanging our ideas about the topic itself. It's really hard to put timestamps on these ideas, because in just one sentence I already bring up like 2 or 3 things sometimes, and the same goes for you. And we are just having a conversation with each other, and this makes it hard to actually put timestamps on specific topics. And I am terribly sorry for all the people, and I'm always replying on YouTube. I really always like, I'm sorry, but with that format of the improvement season, it is kind of not really appropriate. Over on our normal podcast, absolutely fine. And you can, for the timestamp fans, you find plenty of timestamps over there to fully enjoy and embrace. But in that format, I beg your pardon, but it's not really the best. And
Yeah, I think you said it right there. Like, we are all open to suggestions. We always take like feedback. If you have any for us, please let us know, because we love the podcast. And if it can be like one day maybe we could be the biggest bodybuilding and physique like podcast there is, and that'd be amazing. And so every bit of feedback you give us is very much appreciated. So thank you. And apart from that, as always, like, comment, subscribe, give us a review, and always join our free Facebook group. We'd love to have you in there. There's some great discussions going down. And normally we do a weekly Q&A. I'm hopefully going to do one later today, if not tomorrow, to find some time for that, because I've had no internet. But yeah, apart from that, just we'll catch you next week, I guess.
Cool. Talk to you soon. Cheers.
Cheers, guys.